Yeah, this sikha is al derech the sikhis and the sikhis explaining the mila of lifnei matan Torah over la'achar matan Torah. This normally we're always saying the mila of after matan Torah. That's when mitzvahs really count. Tachtenim yalu yenim, the pitul agzera, shachas ha'etzem. But there are a few sikhis where we're still madgish the mila and the necessity of the avodah of lifnei matan Torah. Sometimes even the mila of the ovis over the lodis, the deris of after matan Torah. This is taking that kav. The Rebbe will explain to us the mila before matan Torah, after matan Torah, and the hero will be for us now after matan Torah. That in a sense we're still before the matan Torah of the gula mitzvah shlema, which is the ultimate the Torah chadashim mititeit, the ultimate kilishim havaya, as we will see. And since we are now in Zman Golos, which is the goyim through the Gilu of Lasalavay, and the goyim is higher than the thing that it brings, so it means there's a Maila. We're like the Ovis of the Tuldis. We're goyim now, the Gilu of the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. Means in a sense we have higher Keiches, representing now something even deeper than what we'll have in the Gilui B'Kara Mamish B'Bias Mashiach Tzidkin. Rebbe brings it out as follows. So the Sikha begins with the Shaila and the Pshutim Shal Ksuvim, Vaeira, El Avraham, El Yitzchak, El Ya'akov, El Shakai, Shmei Havaya Lo Nidaitu Lahem. They got to know me, but they didn't really get to know the Shem Havaya. Therefore, tell the Yidden that they will merit to have the Gili of Ani Havaya. What's the Lachaim? If you say, even though, the pasuk is missing a even though. And even though the Avis didn't get it, still Dafka the children will get it, and Dafka the children will get it. You don't say they didn't get it. Lachain, they're getting it. Ma kesher. Because the Avis didn't get Shem Havaya, Lachain, you're getting it. When you say Lachain, it's Mesuba v'tetzah me'inyan shalafonov. Because Vaeira el Abraham, Lachain, you are getting Havaya. What's the Lachain? Rebbe right away brings out in Hara 3 that what we were thinking in our minds. What's the question over here? The Shai is saying that since they didn't get to see it, I was very good with them, but they still didn't see Havaya. Therefore, we're still missing it, and that's why Lachain. That's why now you need Havaya. But the Rebbe says in Pshutim Shel Dvarim, because the Lachain is coming after Vaeira Shmi Havaya Lo Nodaite Lahem. It's mashma that in Pshutim Shel Dvarim. The Lachain is going on that the Ovis did not get Havaya. Because they didn't get Havaya, that's why you're getting Havaya. What's the Kesher Advar? Child number 2, how could it be the name of the Parshas Vaeira, which means the Gili that went to the Ovis? How does that stem with the whole Parsha that's saying that they didn't get this Gili? Vaeira is saying what the Ovis got, and the whole Parsha is saying that we're going to get more, we're getting Shem Havaya. The Mela near Lamer says that Rebbe takes this Hanocha that the Ovis, because they're also called Ovis, that and Maisa Ovis similar banim, that means that it's stronger. The banim are living from the Hashpah of the Ovis. It's mistaber that the Ovis were higher than the Tuldas, and they had a Gilui which is even higher than from after Matan Torah. And because they had this higher level, Lachain, in other words, because the Ovis had this high level, that's why you'll also get some of that level. It'll trickle down to you also after Matan Torah. To explain, So first the Rebbe explains how the Avos had the same thing of Matan Torah, which is a big chiddush because they always say, right, that Matan Torah is Shlei Berach higher. Then the Rebbe is going to say that in a sense the Avos are even higher. So the first thing is, by Matan Torah was the Gilui Hashem Havaya, because it's the Amshacha of Bli Gvul, and that's when there was the Bittul Agzera, when the Tachtainim are able to go to Elyenim, the Elyenim are able to go to Tachtainim. This started already by the Avos, by Bris Milah. That's why he says Simna Yodcha Tachas Yirechi, because it became a Chefza Shal Mitzvah in this Indian of Bris Milah. So he already started this Indian of Chibra Elyenim and Tachtainim. Even though it wasn't really Tachtainim, because this is the Bris Milah of Avram Avinu, and Avram Avinu is the Merkavah Tzadikus, it's not really Tachtainim. But number one, because this brought about the Shidduch of Yitzchak Rivka, which is in Ma'oban. Number two, because it was done through Eliezer, who's a Bechin of Orur, Ata Orur. And he's the one involved in doing this. That's the Indian of Esav Chashech and Vaeira. So it did entail an Indian of being Mevarer, the Tachtain, and bringing it up to the Elyon. So they already had this Indian of Chibra Yenim et Tatainim, Take, in one Indian, just in Bris Milah, but they already had. On the other hand, it says Shmi Avaya Loino Daiti Lohem, because it was only in one Aver. It wasn't like in everything they do. When their tefillin was still able to go afterwards in the garbage. There wasn't any kedusha in tefillin. A mitzvah, they built a mishka, let's say they had a house, a yeshiva. There wasn't any holiness in that place. Because b'chlolus, it wasn't tachtainim yalo yenim. It was just in one Aver. But leidach, because it was already in one place, the Rebbe says this in Ara 25. When you have even just one thing of gvul, but that's penetrated with bli gvul, because that's something that's impossible in gidrei hagvul to have in it, the gashmi should become ruchnius. When you have elyenim coming through the tachtainim and tachtainim al elyenim, even in one prat, that already shows that you're connected here to gilui of havaya. You're going out of hagbolis. It's not in just the one prat, but it means you're already tapped into this possibility of it being in everything. And that's why Taka the Lashon just is Shmiya. It doesn't say Shmiya Vaya Loy Hoidaiti. It says Loy Nikarti. It wasn't clear in everything that they really had the Gili Shem Avaya. But the truth is they had Shem Avaya. Even if it was able to come out in one thing, that the Bris Milah, it became Mamish Chefza Shal Mitzvah, like after Matan Torah, so that means they already have this Kritzas Gdorim of Elyenim and Tachtainim, and therefore the Bris Milah is becoming holy, which shows we're already tapping into the Bli Gvul. Yeah, the Indian is verstanden. So Mamela, they already had this Indian of after Matan Torah. It just wasn't the Gilui till Matan Torah. Sifei boy Mikyaiser. They had an etzem which is even higher than the whole story of Matan Torah. The Rebbe says a similar verse what we're about to learn in Kiseitze Toshin Onav. Those of you that remember. What he says here in Sifei is that this whole Maisa of that we're saying that we have to be Mechaber al Yonim v'Tachtainim, and that there's this Chidush that we're breaking Kritzis Hagdorim of al Yonim and Tachtainim, and that's like the Hamshach of Etzem. That's all in the place. That's only Mitzvah Tachtainim, in a place where al Yonim and Tachtainim matter. So for al Yonim v'Tachtainim and Tachtainim, al Yonim is out of. But in Elikus Shalamayla Migeder Elim v'Tachtain, there's no chiluk in zman of lifnei Matan Torah lacher Matan Torah, and there's no chiluk in mokim of Maila and Elin and Tachta. And the same thing is for a yid, that this whole thing that he has a avoida of this thing, making the Tachtainim into the Alyenim, that's only the way he comes down the mata. When it's not the etzem of a yid, where it says the etzem of Yisrael is kadma l'chol davar, we're even higher than Torah, which that's like the darga of the avos, because they're the etzem of Kol Bnei Yisrael. Like Avraham Avinu is Reish Lama Aminim, he has a Muna, Mesiras Nefesh, Etzem Anashama. There's no Yenim, there's no Tachtainim. It's L'chatchila Elikus, which which is in Tachtonim like Elyonim, is in Elyonim like Tachtonim, is only Atzmos. So the Chidush of Matan Torah is that we're going down even to a place of it's fakert. Matan Torah is a tzimtzum. That we're going down to even a level of Ishtalshalos, and we're making that even there he should make a chibur of Elyonim and Tachtonim. Al derech where the Rebbe explains in other places the mile of a child over the bar mitzvah. As we look at it, we say a child is like potter for mitzvahs. He's a lower level. When he comes bar mitzvah, that's when he becomes shaykh to Torah mitzvahs. The Rebbe in some sikhs turns it around. He says, "Fakert, a child. That's when he's experiencing the etzem of Yisrael, where he's higher than Torah. He doesn't have a chiyuv because that's where a yid is a yid. There's still dinim of pikuach nefesh that he's teicha kol Torah kula. Chal Shabbos also for a child that's a 2-year-old. It's a yid. Once a child embraces, recognizes he's a yid, and he's happy that he's a yid. That's the chinuch that we give a child when he's young. The etzem to be happy, the ata v'chartanu. He's a yid. Now you have, what's your mission? Diuk, mission. It's like the way it's yedit after tahirah, after barasa, yotzarta. What's your mission in life? It's the uftu that the tachtonim should go, Elyonim should go on tachtonim. But that's already stage 2. First, there's this etzem. So derech, that this is in a person's life. What they're saying here in the Sikha, this is like Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael begins with the Avos. Avos is that there's a yid that he's a maimin in Hashem as Mesiras Nefesh, and that's Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. And then Klal Yisrael, after that, their children are doing the tafkid of being mechaber Elyonim v'tachtonim, even in the levels where there's Elyonim v'tachtonim. But here's where it gets tricky. And this Evav is back and forth. It brings us to the Maimer of Atzat Tetzaveh. The fee what we said. So if this is the whole case, the Matan Torah is a Yerida. Matan Torah Sachakol being Mechaber Elyonim and Tachtonim, which is not negeh b'chal to the etzem. Much better to stay in the matzah of the etzem. Like you said, if Lefi Hanal, what we said before, becoming bar mitzvah is a Yerida. Azay, you're a yid. For Tzivus Hashem, you're one with the Eibishter, and now you got a job. You have to lower yourself. But Sinish does it because when you're mamshich giluyim, when you put giluyim together, when you do the avoid of giluyim, the tzira of the keiches, that's a bigger giluyin etzem because hagufa that etzem is removed from giluyim shows that it's not the real etzem, and that's why we always say about the mile of Shavuos, the mile of Matan Torah, that now is Hamshachas Etzem. We mean to say, in reference to Atzat Tetzaveh, right, the higher level of Etzem, the level of that where Etzem is the true Etzem, where it's Mekusher B'Ha'atzmus, where it's one with the Tziyur, when it penetrates that even the Tziyur is able to be out of its Geder, that brings out the true Etzem. And that's why Matan Torah is greater than before Matan Torah. Then we're back to square one. What's the mile of the others? If that's the real etzem is only after Matan Torah. So what do we have from the Avos? First of all, the Avos also had that because they had bris milah. Remember, they also had the Elyonim coming into Tachtonim. He was also mamshkin and giluyim in bris milah. But still, it's not enough to say the mile of the Avos because at the end of the day, the higher etzem is dafke when it's in giluyim. That's only after Matan Torah. Never then. It's rotzev v'shuv. It's since in the end of the day, Avodas Avos was Mesiras Nefesh Begilui, was Etzem Begilui. So true, that doesn't have the Maila of the Emes Etzem, the Emes Koyach Etzem, that it penetrates all the Giluyim. That's going to be Dafka Matan Torah. But because in the Avodah of penetrating in the Giluyim, you could forget that you're dealing with Etzem, and you could just get carried away with the Chitzonius that it's just Giluyim. So mitzad leading the way, you always have to remember the Avos. The Avos are always leading the way of Etzem. Even though the stronger Etzem will be when it's going through the Pratim, but it's not another Etzem, and therefore we could throw the Etzem of before Matan Torah out the door. It always stays that the Avos, we look up to them, the Mesiras Nefesh, and we said before, a person always has to remember, has to always lahazik g'deilam al ktanim, has to always be mechanech ktanim. He always has to remember that he was a child. He always has to daven like a child. Even though the etzem that's in being bar mitzvah is in a way more penetrating than as a child, but the only way you'll relate to that etzem is if you remember taka etzem the way it's betar rasa. And in the reference of Atat Tetzaveh, even though there's a bigger etzem and living mitech chava, and they're putting elikus in every detail, going on shlichus, that every prat should be the way it should be. The only way to remember, though, that we have Koyach Etzem is by reading stories of our Zaydas, the Mesiras Nefesh of Der Hashishi, where you see that Etzem that they had in fighting the Russians. And that's the Indian of Mesiras Nefesh. Then we could interpret it and have that also in America, which is even a greater Mesiras Nefesh, as the Rebbe explains them out of the Sabbath. But the leaders of Mesiras Nefesh, the leaders of Etzem, will always stay our Zaydas, the Chassidim, the Friedrich, he's just the Der of Mesiras Nefesh Begilu. So Derech Zeh is with this in the Avos. The Avos are the ones that remain to represent the Indian of Etzem. And the answer is because in Etzem there's no real ischalkus in Etzem. If you're medaikim out to the Savi, you see the Rebbe doesn't say it's another darga in Etzem. The Rebbe says Etzem kumoishi mekusheres ima'atmus. It's not like two dargas in Etzem. Etzem is not two things. There's one Etzem. It's just that Etzem, without penetrating in Giluyim, is mistaken as if it doesn't have a shaykhis to Giluyim. I'm saying when you put it in Giluyim, then you see what the real etzem is. But it's not like two atzomis has shalom. So there's a here. It's not like after Matan Torah you're really getting higher than before Matan Torah, and they were really missing something from before Matan Torah. It's the etzem. It's more revealed from after when it's more penetrated in the world. Besides the fact that the Avis also penetrated it in the Bris Milah, even though it's more when it's in the Welt after Matan Torah, but the Avis represented the Koyach HaEtzem. And for this reason, the Avos come to every. That's why they came to they come to the Chasana, which is Matan Torah, which is to show that what you're doing now is all b'koyach Avos, and the more you go lamata, it's called the Avos because the Avos are Giluy HaEtzem. That's why we're able to go in and make the avoid of Matan Torah, which means to take care of the details of Torah mitzvahs. So b'koyach HaEtzem of the Avos. Zion, the Rebbe moves on. What's the Vaeira for us now about the Avis if we're much after the Avis? Now we're ready. Now we're doing our work. So the Rebbe says that's biyachas to our Vaeira for Matan Torah, but biyachas to the Gilui of Shem Havaya, which will be lost minas gala lost lava. The same way we explained that it wasn't the real, that a real etzem is only when it's b'ham shacha lamata. So too, it's only the real etzem when it's hamshacha begilui lamata. And if it's not begilui mamish lamata, it means there's something missing. So we are, in a sense, a step before the Gilui. We're like the Avos before Matan Torah. And so what we could learn from this is the same way the Torah is emphasizing the Maila of the Avos, in which you know that the whole Maisa of the Matan Torah is just the Gilui from the Avos. It's the Koyach of the Mesiras Nefesh of the Avos. So the same thing, we have to have this chizuk and understand that the whole Giluyim of La'asal Avos is really b'koyach. And the goyim of it is the Mesiras Nefesh, which we are having now in Zman Galus. Now is the etzem and Sachar. What's Mashiach Sachakel? Sachakel, but it's a gilui of what we already have now. It's not something new that'll just begin then. It's the etzem now being begilui. It's the Einarech, the same way after Matan Torah is Einarech to the Avis. But the flip side is that the Avis they remain the leaders of this inyan. So Derech, what else says the Maimon, we're always going to remember Yitzias Mitzrayim. We're always going to remember, in other words, Mashiach doesn't start from then, a second from now, learning, davening, no tzaris, Goyim will have all respect from the Goyim. It starts from now. Mashiach's story will always begin. This is a Yid. Yid now that so many years, unfortunately, didn't see the Rebbe and are doing things on their own, and with Mesiras Nefesh. And these Yidden, now look at them learning and davening and bringing korbanis and bringing with the Rebbe and sing the Rebbe. There's always going to stay the letterhead, the background of the Geula, the same way the background of Matan Torah is always based off Vaeira Avos. Their Mesiras Nefesh when they didn't have mitzvahs. They did mitzvahs, wasn't like nowadays mitzvahs. But it's off that background it's a Yid, like a Avos Dika Yid that's doing mitzvahs. So too, the whole Gilim Allah Avos is emphasized off the background that it's a Yid. And where do you see the Yid in the Mesiras Nefesh now that he's lonely and he's Golum al Shulchan Aviyam, and he doesn't see, and he doesn't hear, and he still has Mesiras Nefesh should do the right thing. That one mitzvah, that one thing which he's going to Mesiras Nefesh. It's matzav of a skafi. That yid will have all the Giluim Allah Salam. But it's b'koyach what? The koyach that we have nowadays. These, so b'meila nimtza from all this that there's three tkufis. There's before Matan Torah the Avos, which were the etzem for the Giluyim, the Amshacha of Matan Torah. And now after Matan Torah, it's still the etzem, the yachas to the Giluyim of L'asal Avos, which that's the third tkufi of Ma'aseh Mashiach, when it's going to be Nimshach, the higher level of Shem Havaya, which is the higher level, the real etzem, Mamish Begilui, which will be L'asal Avos. So this, the Rebbe says, is like Shmais Vaeira Boy. Shmais is like being in Mitzrayim. That's like before Matan Torah. Vaeira is the story of Shmi Havaya Nodaiti Lahem. That's like Matan Torah. And Boyel Pari, this guy was coming in called Nahirin. That's like the Gilui of L'asal Avos. That's going on the third kufa. This of entering the third kufa is connected to Shabbos Abarchim Shvat, because Shvat has to do with Mashiach. Because the Yosu Shevet Yehuda, he's the leader, and also that he's a ruler, and then also that he's a branch from Yotze Shevet Mulucha, Yotze Chaytim Geza Yishai. So it's thinking of the third level. It's the emphasis of the etzem coming begilui, especially that in this star we have the Yom Hailula of Yud Shvat. The Rebbe says here that everything is ready. The Rebbe splits up the Nesias of the Fidik Rebbe into three tkufis, like similar tkufis by the time of the Rebbe Rashab, Nesiosei Balmadein, and then after from Yud Aleph Shvat Tavshin Yud Aleph, which is already the third shlav of Yemaisa Mashiach, like we're saying, the highest level of etzem in a way of gilui. Protius Yeser in the Fidik Rebbe's life in Alts Rebbe Gufa. The first 10 years in Russia is like Mitzrayim. The next 10 years in Poland is like Matan Torah. The next 10 years in America, when he's saying the Iker is Apotzis Meyonis Chutzamamish to bring the Lat to L'Tshuva, Lat to L'Gula. Okay, L'Peil, standing Shabbos Arachim Shvat, you have to be this battle to our Nasi, which our Nasi is. I just want to before I say this. So in Hasis, we're in the second, getting ready for the third. And what's the vart here? That there's the avos that already in the first have the second. So there has to be in the second someone that already has the third. The Rebbe is not saying it so clear, but the Azay Darfan Pashtem. The Rabbeim, the Rebbe is already the second and the third. The Rebbe Tav Yud Aleph Shvat Tavshin Yud Aleph is already in the level of Mashiach. The Mela, what we have to do, that we're the Rebbe's Chassidim in the second, getting ready and being Mamshich the third, is to be bottled to the Rebbe, calling bottle and Mekusher, which Binyan Ikri is Lavi Ma'aseh Mashiach, being Mizbainin, that taking me out, the Rebbe is coming in and checking each one of his Chassidim and Mekusharim. That's spoiler, we should do it more B'Shleimus, we should make Reisef Abrenginishin, Lahakal Kilis, B'chol Shabbos, we should, besides the Fabrengen of every Shabbos, we should make a special one for Shabbos Avarchim, B'chazik us, and doing the last job of bringing the Geula, and to get ready for your Shvat, and then take it on Mamish, you should go to Beis Midrash Shlishi Mikdash Adnai Keinenu Yadech. Wonderful Sicha.